Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this special council meeting, Tuesday, 4th of June, 2024. Just like to ask anyone for apologies or leave of absence. So don't think we've got any apologies. Just want to also welcome Mal from the waste team. Just wanted to offer a minute's silence and some prayers for. We lost our Rosie Schmid, who was she used to work at the Wandai Shire Council, and then she worked for our council in amalgamation for a number of years in economic development and exec services. She was a dear friend to many of us, and her funeral is this Friday. So I just wanted to stand and offer a minute's silence. Thank you. Thank you. And also, I'm just going to say the Lord's Prayer just in honour of Rosie, and because it's a prayer that I think we should say every day. Our Father, if you want to join with me, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you. Now we'll move on to Declaration of Interest on page 4 of the agenda. Does anyone have a Declaration of Interest? If not, we'll move on to the item that we're all here about, which is item 6.1, which is the weighbridge procurement on page 5. And I think would Mal be here to talk about that one? I think you'll hand over to Acting General Manager Leanne to introduce Mal. Thank you.
Councillors, we're presenting a report here today for the purchase of a temporary weighbridge for the Mergen waste facility. So under the Waste Reduction and Recycling Act, Council is obligated to have, if we're going to continue to operate the landfill, we are required to have a weighbridge in by the 1st of July. We need to fast track an arrangement where we purchase a temporary weighbridge and install it up in Mergen as soon as we can, so we can continue to operate the landfill at Mergen. We've also got two two-way bridges being installed at other landfills, one at the Nango and one at Wandai. They are in progress at the moment. The risk that we have is that we may not meet the deadline of the 1st of July for the install of those two weighbridges. So in the interim, we are working with DESI to see if we can get an exemption or an arrangement where we can continue to operate as we are. If not, we will be in a position, if we were to install this weighbridge at Mergen, that we would move our waste from Wandai and the Nango temporarily and take it through to Mergen over this weighbridge and then into the landfill in Mergen. That would be a temporary arrangement until our two weighbridges are installed at Wandai and the Nango. Now, they're close, but they probably will not be ready for the 1st of July at the moment. So this is a very important project for our waste management team to make sure that we meet our obligations and we can continue to dispose of waste in our region, in our current landfills. So we've provided a report there with quite some detail about the purchase options for council to consider. There's the purchase outright of the weighbridge, or there's an arrangement where we can lease the weighbridge over a 30-month period, or there's an option there where we could lease the weighbridge to the end of this financial year, and then do the purchase next financial year. So there's a breakdown of those costings there for council's consideration. So happy to take questions about the purchase options, or if you've got any specific questions about the temporary weighbridge. Mal here from Waste Management is happy to answer any of those specific questions that you may have about the weighbridge. Open for questions.
Deputy Mayor Potter.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, just a question probably through to GM Leanne or Mal with regards to this. Now, I must say thank you to the state government for making us do this. It's wonderful that we get to spend money because they told us we had to. So with regards to this particular weighbridge, if we purchase the option 1 and purchase the weighbridge outright, what can we do with that weighbridge? What would we do with that weighbridge, you know, in a couple of years' time, sort of once Mergen was full and we could no longer use it?
Through you, Madam Mayor, being a temporary weighbridge, the option would be then you could actually remove the weighbridge in 3 or 4 years' time once you've ceased the need to utilise it, and you could actually relocate it to another location. So depending on what our future is with the development of landfills in the future, it could be that it's moved to another site, or you would dispose of it. You would have the option of selling it and recouping some of your costs back in the future. But we haven't decided what we would do with it in 3 to 4 years' time, but you would have options.
Thank you. The question I have...
Yeah, so with that being said, Madam Mayor, I'm actually happy with option 1.
Thank you. Councillor Hyde.
Just a question. July the 1st is very close. This idea of hauling rubbish sounds a very expensive option. How long have we known about July the 1st, and why are we talking about this in June, not in April, when we could have got these things done earlier?
Through you, Madam Mayor, just in relation to waste management, remember we recently had a workshop with Joel here from Resource Innovations. We talked about all the options for council moving forward. Back then, when council was preparing their waste management strategy, it was considered that Mergen wasn't an option and wasn't in need of a weighbridge because the landfill was going to not continue for a long period of time, and council was focusing on moving forward in developing, I suppose, the Nango, Kingaroy, and continuing with Wondai. As we've moved through in our investigations and been talking to Desi about our thresholds, about the amount of material that is coming into all of those landfills, we've also triggered a compliance matter there, and we've really got to look at where we've got capacity in our landfills and where we've got licences to move our waste into those areas. Now, Mergen has got capacity and it's got a licence that will allow us to move our waste to Mergen. Therefore, Mergen now is really a very important option and a very important part of our waste management program going forward. And by putting a weighbridge in there, it will give us capacity and time to look at developing a more of a regional waste management facility or a new waste management facility at Kingaroy. So we have a council report coming to the next council meeting for council to give us direction and I suppose support that progression so we can actually start planning correctly and make these informed decisions, so we've given ourselves more time and adequate time. So I think this is really based on the fact that very quickly we've identified that there is capacity at Mergen. It is an important option for us. Otherwise, if we don't go ahead and put the weighbridge in at Mergen, you would have to move your waste elsewhere until your 2 weighbridges are built at Wondai and Mergen, Wondai and the Nango.
So why weren't Wondai and Nango done earlier? Because they're the ones that are going to be the problem, aren't they?
So they were identified several years ago, probably 18 months ago, as the facilities that needed weighbridges. So they are over the capacity of 2,000 tonnes of rubbish, and they were identified as the locations to have weigh bridges, and council endorsed that. Council applied for grant funding, so the two weigh bridges have received grant funding from two different sources of funding, and we put that through to the state government. That was approved. You've had quite a few resource issues in waste management where you haven't had the staff there to probably progress the weigh bridges as fast as you've needed to. But since Christmas, since January, we've really picked up those projects and moved them forward. So it does take time to procure weigh bridges and also the design to make sure that we've met the design requirements. And now you've got to a point where you've appointed a contractor, you have a builder, and those projects are progressing well, but they're just not going to meet that time frame.
Councillor Sander.
In saying that over the next few months, Mergen Dump is going to get, extra volume of rubbish in there. And you say that it's going to close in a few years. I just want it noted that when that time comes, I'll fight to try and keep that dump open as long as we can for the residents of Mergen, instead of pumping that extra volume in now and then shutting it early. I just want it noted that if the time comes, the other dumps I'd like to reciprocate so that we can prolong the life of the Mergen dump for the residents when that time comes.
So I just wanted to ask, is that an option? Because I've already had a complaint from the Barimba Bush Caravan Park concerned, because they're very, very happy with the new contractor. They said that the transfer station and the landfill looks amazing. It's really tidy and clean, but now they're worried about the increased truck noise because it causes the issues at their Barimba Bush Park, because they can hear the smashing and the banging all the time, and they're concerned about the extra volume of trucks. So is it an option to not just bang into Mergen but to spread it out across our region?
So in the short term, this is about solving an issue in the short term, and we're probably looking at a couple of months where we may need to move the waste to Mergen. We will not need to do it, so we will need to move it to Wando because you have no capacity in your threshold at the Nango, Wandai and Kingaroy. So remember we presented the other day that you've met your threshold, you're over in the amount of waste that is going into your landfills at those three locations. So in the short term, you really do not have another option in the South Burnett. Your alternative option would be Gendowie, or further than that, it would be Ipswich. So in the short term, you do not have an option.
Councillor Erkins.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. I missed the last meeting where we had the workshop on the waste. However, from memory, my last workshops where we were told that Mergen was going to have to close because they didn't have capacity, so they would, in the not too distant future, they would be closing. That Kingaroy was already over the capacity. So what we were looking at was the possibility of a super dump at Nanango or moving out of the area. So I'm just a little confused as to what we're talking about here, which really seems to be at odds with what we were talking about 12, 18 months ago, where, there was big talk about the fact that we didn't have room in really any of our tips, and we had to make a decision as to whether we were going to go down the road of a super in Nanango, or whether we would be looking at sending all our rubbish away. In which case, I just don't know. I mean, I don't want to see us spending money on things that are only going to be there for a short time, and I'm a bit disappointed that we just seem to be going down a different path than where we were, what has changed? Is Kingaroy suddenly got more room, or, is there more room now at Mergen, or I'm just totally confused as to where we're going, because it does seem at odds with the information we have been given previously.
Did you want to answer that, Acting GM Leanne?
Through you, Madam Mayor, unfortunately, I think Councillor Erkins may have missed our workshop where we presented quite a detailed update on all of the scenarios that was in that waste management strategy. So happy to talk through it again. I'm happy to spend some time with you just explaining all the background around the thresholds, what are the requirements, where we're at with each landfill. But we presented that a couple of weeks ago. We had Joel here. Unfortunately, as we've received more information and our discussions with DESI, we've identified that the Nango, Wondai and Mergen are all have met their threshold and over currently, and that's not going to reduce in future years because of the way we dispose of our rubbish and the amount of people that we have here. So what has to happen is council's actually got to invest in looking at an alternative option like you're saying, a super dump or a regional landfill, a new landfill facility. And what we spoke about is what that triggers now and how far that we need to go with that. So they're most likely engineered facilities today, or we build a bulk facility to transport all of our waste out of here, and it's a bulk transfer facility. So we presented both of those options to council, and that's what will come back through in this detailed report, and council will actually provide us with guidance in which way you want to go. But in these discussions that we had, we identified that Mergen does have a licence there that we can move more waste to Mergen, which we weren't aware of. And because we weren't going ahead with the weighbridge, it wasn't an option back then. But if we put the weighbridge in place, then we can actually move our waste to Mergen. Yes, it will fill up the Mergen landfill quicker. You've only got maybe 3 or 4 years there anyway. What we are talking about is the compactor that we have at Kingaroy that is no longer required under the new contractual arrangement. It is currently being repaired. It could be that the compactor is moved to Mergen and that our waste actually goes through that compactor and it is compacted down before it goes into the landfill. So that would actually give us a little bit longer at Mergen. So that's another option that we're just researching at the moment. So happy to talk to you more about it, Councillor Erkins, but in summary, yes, we have a waste management strategy. There was actions in there for council to investigate. One of them was the Nango, but unfortunately with the catchment, the water, stormwater across the site, vegetation and endangered species, we're unlikely to actually continue with our investigations in the Nango, and we'll be looking at other options.
So my concern is we seem to be quite often having these decisions come in that we have to make a decision, straight away. It's urgent that we make a decision. I just don't think that we need to be put under that sort of pressure. We knew 18 months ago that things were happening. When are we going to make that decision? Are we going to make that decision about what are we going to do with our rubbish and have a month's notice because suddenly it's all on us? Surely we can work, get this planning done and start moving on it so that the plan is in place and it's not coming to us at the last minute, because we have known that we needed to have the weighbridges in and they're going. But if they're all going to be, if we're going to be eventually sending our rubbish out, are they still going to be weighed at these towns, or are those weighbridges going to be kept in use? Or are we spending money on weighbridges that everything's going to go to one central point, and what are we going to do with all these weighbridges that we have? I just don't, I don't want to be, that we're seen to be not making plans in advance. So we're not making, we're not making decisions that we're planning with the future in mind. Making decisions, we're not looking what the future is. We're just making decisions to put a Band-Aid on when we really need to have the full picture if our rubbish is going to go away, if we're not going to be able to do something at any of the tips here, but we need to know that, and we need to get onto that now, not at the last minute. We don't want to be in the same position as we are with other things, where we've got to make that decision there and then, and we're sort of, I feel, pushed into a decision and not really researching and knowing what we're doing.
So I think, sorry, Councillor Sanders, CEO Mark just wants to answer
Okay.
Councillor Erkins.
Taking up Councillor's high point and yours, Councillor Erkins, this one's come about by circumstance. The easy option would have been to do it through operational budget, put it on a truck and cost council more money. So that would be. The actual 2 tenders for the 2 permanent weighbridges went through in the January council meeting. So we actually have moved heaven and earth to get the weighbridges in by June this year, July. Now, my understanding is, and I'll stand corrected, is from last time I looked anyway, that the construction has either been done or completed, but we're caught with the concrete having to cure, so you can't drive a truck over them. So they'll be there by the 1st of July. So have we been inefficient? Are we unorganised? No, we're not. The procurement process went through, so they're extended processes. We got them in July, we knew about. So Mergen didn't count in that solution at that point in time because we would have had the weighbridges in. Now, we'll probably be 4, maybe 6 weeks out on Wandai and Nanango. So the department isn't giving any common sense approach. Weighbridges are in. Yep, no, 1st of July is the deadline. Too bad, don't care if it costs you $1 million. So that's how we've come to having to look. A review of, trying to save money and actually look at options. So the other easy option would have been just to lease this thing, drop him in, run through the operational, so we wouldn't put you in this position, but that would actually cost more money. Again, Leanne or Mel, if I get any of these facts wrong, please don't hesitate to correct me. I'm not the content expert on it, but we didn't, when Leanne and the team came and saw me, I said my preference isn't to, it would be to actually get a council resolution and do it properly, keep the auditors happy. Mergen didn't, as I said, didn't factor. So the reason we haven't gone for a permanent weighbridge is that you can reutilise this. There's a number of businesses that will actually benefit from it as well as in Mergen because they won't have to drive to Wandai now. So their commercial waste will be able to be done on weight rather than volume. So there is a number of advantages to it as far as. And my limited understanding of where the department and both sides of politics, I tend to agree, I don't think it matters who's in government, is that we're going to utilise these weighbridges for waste, be it for a transfer station, because the commercial businesses will have to have their waste weighed, and it'll be interesting to see what goes down. I know in other areas, as I said, working with my mothers, we're dropping domestic waste off and we're being weighed in the Lockyer and different things. So these won't be wasted. There's going to be use of them going forward. The timing of this, Mergen tip, when the original plans were made for Wandai and Nanango, as I said, Mergen wasn't seen as being the priority at that point in time because we were trying to divert waste to other areas. The licensing resets in September, the license levels. So it has a quirky, I won't say financial year, but a waste year as far as when you can dip and how much rubbish you can put in. One of the issues we have is that there is a lot of waste going and the volume going into the landfills is high. So Kingaroy and the waste strategy, Councillor Erkins, actually it's apologies because you did miss that one. So there was a lot of information conveyed that day. Kingaroy with a line cell is actually a viable option now compared to the cost of transferring away. That's a whole broader conversation. Mergen has an extra capacity licence that allows for, I won't say it was discovered, but upon review we can utilise that licence. So we've got more capacity in Mergen than what was originally thought 12 months ago, 18 months ago. So it actually makes when I say a really good solution, it makes a solution at the moment to meet the licence requirements of the department and waste needs going forward. Is this ideal? No, it's not. Is it the most cost-effective option? Yes, it is at this point in time, in my belief anyway. And I think we would be just throwing good money after bad if we leased or rented this thing and then had to buy one down the track anyway, because that's where the law's going. So it is unfortunate, and the only reason that it's here today as a special is the timing of it to meet the compliance requirements. And if that helps with some of the history, but yeah, January we put the 2 tenders through for the weighbridges.
Thanks for that, Mark. And I also want to acknowledge the fact that there has been changes of staff. We haven't had staff in, and I do want to acknowledge that. But I would like to see, as a council, that we're working towards a better outcome and what the eventual outcome has got to be, so that we know where we're going, and when we're making decisions based on where we've got to go in the future, rather than these quick fixes, because it does need to be, we need to get that solution. We need to work out where we're going and what we can be using and what we can't be using. So, but thanks.
And if I may, Mayor, I think the department's made its point very clear. There is no, and maybe we were trying to find other options. I think, as they say, the law is the law in this case, and the January report, and again, correct me guys if I'm wrong, will start to talk about where do we go next. So it won't be something that has to be spent by the 1st of July. It'll be, okay, where do we go next with this? And whether we like government policy or agree with it is immaterial. It's government policy, and they are not going to give on it.
Councillor Sander.
Yeah, Mark commented on CEO Mark commented on a lot of stuff I was going to comment on, but I see where Jane's coming from, but I believe it was just from where I'm sitting, it looks like it was a timing thing, like council was in caretaker mode. None of this sort of stuff was being decided for the last 6 months, basically. I support purchasing the weighbridge because I can see the benefits, like Mark said, of some of the commercial businesses in Mergen will benefit from that. We've had multiple complaints about the volume that was, they were being charged on volume and not weight on plastic and stuff like that. So it's going to benefit the businesses. It's also going to make council compliant, and it'll meet legislation with DESI and other agencies. But I just want to point out that if we do get a huge influx of rubbish into there, I do want it noted that we can look further down the track at prolonging the life of the Mergen dump by sending the bulk rubbish somewhere else to prolong that life in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Sander. So just a question, because I have had the question asked to me. So how much extra is going to be on that Bauchetts Hill Road? How many more trucks are going to be going through in the next 2 or 3 months? Are you able to give some sort of figure? Because I've been asked that by the Baroomba Bush Caravan Park.
Through you, Madam Mayor, we'd actually have to go away and thoroughly calculate that. We're just waiting on the decision of today, so happy to bring that back, take it on notice and bring further information back to Council.
Leanne, would you have if we treated it as a question on notice to the June meeting?
That would be great. Thank you. And I just wanted to also say that it is about what Councillor Sanders said. It's about equity too, because I've had complaints from a lot of the Mergen businesses with the extra charges that they've been having to manage over the last period of time because they've had the problem of no weighbridge. So it will be more equitable for that northern end of the region. So just wanted to put that out there, because the Nanango and Kingaroy people have been benefiting, or Kingaroy in particular, because they've been able to, commercial operators have been able to go there and get a cheaper rate because it's on weight as opposed to volume. So if there's no more questions, I'll read the officer's recommendation that South Ballot Regional Council procure 1 11-metre heavy-duty single-deck weighbridge from Newcastle Weighing Systems, ensuring Council's obligations under the Waste Reduction and Recycling Act 2011 have been met for the installation of the weighbridge at the Mergen Waste Facility by the required date by the application of exception S235A of the Local Government Regulation 2012, whereby council resolves it is satisfied that there is only one supplier who is reasonably available, and number 2, allocates a total of $210,000 in the 23-24 capital works program for waste management. Would someone like to move that? Councillor Sander, seconded. Councillor Dineen. Any further discussion? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. So then I think that's it. We close the meeting. Close the meeting at 8:35. Thank you everyone for attending, and looking forward to the upcoming workshop. Thank you.